Plant Nutrition, Lesson 2, Leaf Structure. As you all know by now, objectives are very important. After we're done studying the lesson, we have to make sure that we can fulfill the objectives of the lesson. Where does photosynthesis happen? Of course, we all know that photosynthesis happens inside the leaf. So photosynthesis happens inside the leaf because the leaf is the factory of carbohydrates, and it's also adapted for this function. It makes the function very efficiently. Why? Because it allows gas exchange, transport of water and also nutrients, and finally the food that it makes. They also are supported and they maintain their own shape, just like any other part of the plant, by having the vacuoles. When they are filled, they make the cell turgid, and by the cell walls that protect the cell and gives the plant its own shape. So what are the adaptations of the leaf that help the leaf to this job? First, the blade. What's the blade? It's this part surrounded by the rectangle. As you can see, it's broad, width, and long. So it gives a large surface area. Why? To absorb a lot of sunlight and also to increase the rate of carbon dioxide diffusion from the air. The leaf itself is thin. Why? To help the diffusion of the gas and water quickly. Why do I need the gases and water to diffuse quickly? To help them to reach the palisade mesophyll cells quickly and to help the plant do photosynthesis. If the leaf was very thick, the transport of those materials or the diffusion of those materials to the right site will take a very long time. And this will not help the plant to do photosynthesis and to get the nutrition it needs as fast as possible. Also, the leaf has a petiole, this small part that attaches it to the stem. Why do we need the petiole? Because we need our leaf to be steady and looking the same position all the time, because the upper part is full of palisade mesophyll cells that are responsible for photosynthesis, while the lower part is full of stomata. So the upper part is responsible mainly of absorbing light, and the lower part is responsible mainly for gas exchange. What if the leaf is turned upside down? It will not be able to absorb the enough light it needs, and also this will increase the evaporation rate. This is network of veins, or the vascular bundle. What do? They carry the water and minerals to the leaf in order to provide it with the raw materials that it needs to do the photosynthesis, and also they take the food after it's made and transport it to the rest of the plant. The part of the vascular bundle that transports water and minerals is called the xylem, while the part that takes away the food to the rest of the plant is called the phloem. Veins are different in arrangement depending on if this plant is a dicot or a monocot. Let's see the difference between monocots and dicots. Here you see this is a monocot plant, while here this is a dicot plant. Dicot plants like beans, they have two sides, while monocots, they have only one side. The veins in the leaves of this plant usually are parallel to each other, as you can see here, while here the veins are net-like. They look like a network. They cross each other. The vascular bundles here are complexly arranged. They are not just on one line. You have many arrangements, as you can see, while here they are arranged in a ring, just on one line. The type of roots also are different. Here you have fibrous root system, you see, while here it is a tap root. It's thin and tall. The floral parts usually are divided into multiples of 3 in monocots. What does this mean? That the petals can be 3, 6, 9, while in the dicots, the petals are multiples of 4s or 5s, like they can be 4 or 8, or they can be 5 or 10. Let's look deeper into our leaf. Let's take a cross section. Cross section means that you cut and you see under the microscope. So you will see here the upper epidermis. This is the upper epidermis or the epidermis layer. What does it do? It secretes waxy transparent layer called the cuticle. What's the function of the cuticle? It coats the leaf. It protects the leaf from the escaping of any water vapor. What does this mean? Inside the leaf, due to the transport, there is a lot of water that's transported to the palisade mesophyll cells in order to help the palisade mesophyll do the photosynthesis, because water is a very important raw material for photosynthesis. What if this water escaped due to evaporation? Will the cells be able to undergo photosynthesis? Of course not. So the leaf needs to protect this water by creating a layer of waterproof substance that will prevent the evaporation partially, of course, not totally. This part is called, or this layer is called the cuticle, and the cells responsible for secreting it or making it are called the epidermal cells or the epidermis. This whole layer is transparent. What about the green color? From where is it coming? Of course, you all know by now from the palisade mesophyll cells. Here they are, thin and tall, and they are placed in the upper part of our leaf. And of course, the leaf is held in this position with the upper epidermis and the lower epidermis in the same place because of the petiole. The palisade mesophyll cells, as we agreed before from previous lessons, they are thin and tall, full of chloroplasts that are responsible for trapping light energy. They have their cell membranes and cell walls close to each other in order to accommodate a lot of them in a small area. They occupy the very upper part of the leaf. The rest of the cells that are above them are transparent to allow light to pass to them easily. Under the palisade mesophyll, we can see the spongy mesophyll cells. What's their function? Their function is also photosynthesis, but they have less amount of chloroplasts and they have air gaps or air spaces between them. Remember, like any sponge, it's not compact. It contains air bubbles or air spaces between its fibers. So spongy mesophyll also has its own air gaps between. Why? To allow the diffusion of carbon dioxide inside the leaf and oxygen outside. Then we have the lower epidermis. The lower epidermis contains stomata. What's the function of stomata? Simply, the stomata is the pore that allows the oxygen and the carbon dioxide to pass to our leaf. It's surrounded by two guard cells. Guard cells are responsible for opening or closing the stomata. So the lower epidermis, since it contains a lot of stomata, it allows the passage of not only the gases that we want to pass, like oxygen and carbon dioxide, but also water vapor. Water vapor escapes from the stomata. So we don't need a lot of stomata on the upper part or the upper epidermis. Why? Because it's subjected to more heat and light energy. So if I have more stomata, this will allow the escape of more and more water vapor. And this water is very important. I need it. It's a raw material for photosynthesis. So I don't need a lot of stomata on the upper epidermis. Also, having a lot of stomata in the upper epidermis will reduce the number of palisade mesophyll cells. And this is not a good thing because I need a lot of palisade mesophyll cells in order to have a lot of food. So that's why the stomata are larger in number in the lower epidermis to reduce the evaporation. Evaporation of water from plants is called transpiration. The definition of transpiration is the evaporation of water at mesophyll surface followed by the loss of water vapor from the leaves. And as we said, water is very precious for the plant. So I need the rate of transpiration to be less in order to keep the water inside. Let's see what affects the rate of transpiration. When the temperature increases, the rate of transpiration, of course, increases, because transpiration is simply evaporation. When you increase heat, evaporation increases. Light, because light is energy, so it's going to increase also the rate of transpiration. More light, more transpiration. Humidity. Humidity is the amount of water vapor in the air already, and water vapor is a gas that moves by diffusion. So, the more the water vapor outside, the less the diffusion will be, because diffusion means the movement from the high to the low concentration. So, the more concentration of water vapor in the air, the more the humidity, the less the transpiration. So, this one is inversely proportional. Air current, the more the air current, the more the transpiration. Why? Because the more wet air will be pushed away from the leaf, and another dry air will come around the leaf. So the transpiration will not stop. More and more dry air, less concentration of water vapor around the leaf, so the transpiration will increase. As you can see here, guard cells around the stomata. This is when the guard cells allow air, or when it's open, and this is when it's closed. The function of stomata again allow diffusion of carbon dioxide and oxygen, and also allow the diffusion of water vapor during transpiration. Finally, let's take a look at the chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are found in the palisade mesophyll, spongy mesophyll, and also in the guard cells. Chloroplasts can move around the cell, and that explains that even when the palisade mesophyll cells are narrow and thin, they still can subject all of their chloroplasts to light energy. Let's look at the details of the chloroplast from the inside. When you look at the chloroplast, you will see a thylakoid. These are disc-like structures where most of the photosynthesis process will happen. And a stack of thylakoids over each other. When you put one over the other, you have a stack or a tower of thylakoids. It's called the granum. When you put many granum together, it's called grana. So the grana is simply the plural of one granum, and the granum is a stack of thylakoids. The outside of the thylakoids, or the outside of the grana, we have a fluid that's called the stroma. So the stroma is the liquid that surrounds all the thylakoids. Swimming in this liquid, you will see ribosomes and starch grains. Why do I see starch grains? Because it's the product of photosynthesis, and ribosomes are responsible for any proteins needed in this process. Also, you will see the outer and the inner membranes. This means that the chloroplast has two membranes, inner membrane and outer membrane. So these are the structures of our chloroplasts. Let's answer some questions. The first question says, the diagram shows a cross-section of part of the leaf. Which type of cell is found in X layer? When you look at the diagram, please read what's written. Here it says the upper epidermis. So what's the layer just below the upper epidermis? Layer X here. Yes, it's the layer that contains the palisade mesophyll cells. So which cell here looks like the palisade mesophyll? Yes, it is cell A. This is how we think of this question. Which row shows most likely number of chloroplasts in the three types of cells in a leaf? Here you have the epidermis. We agreed that the epidermal cells are transparent. So of course they have 0 number of chloroplasts. And the mesophyll cells, these are the ones responsible for photosynthesis. So of course they have the largest number of chloroplasts. And the vascular bundle. These are the xylem and phloem. So are they responsible for photosynthesis? Of course not. So they have 0 number of chloroplasts. So the only possible solution is B, because all of the others will have chloroplasts in the cells that shouldn't have chloroplasts. The diagram shows a part of a leaf in a cross-section. So, as you see, the structures X and Y are both a part of the same cell, organ, tissue, or vessel. This is a palisade mesophyll cell, while this is a gourd cell. They both belong to the same organ, which is the leaf. Why didn't I say they belong to the same cell? Because these are different cells. They cannot belong to the same cell. And why didn't I say they belong to the same tissue? Because tissues are made of similar cells. These are not similar cells. And of course, they do not belong to the same vessel, because vessels are like xylem and phloem, and these are not xylem or phloem cells, right? So this question is about photosynthesis. Complete the sentences using words from the list. Each word may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Reading the question carefully is very important. Why? You will see later. When plants carry out photosynthesis, the chemical called space traps light energy. Chlorophyll, of course, is the chemical that traps energy. The energy is used to combine raw materials to make glucose or starch. Both are correct. This process mainly happens in the palisade layer of the leaf. The gas needed for photosynthesis enters the leaf through the stomata. These are found in the epidermis of the leaf. Leaves appear green because they contain the chemical called chlorophyll. If I did not read this part of the question where it says that the word can be used more than once and some words cannot be used at all, here I could have gotten confused, thinking that chlorophyll cannot be used again. That's why reading the head of the question is very important. Thank you, and I hope this video helps you study.